Hello, welcome back to another episode of Voxel Heist, a Unity tutorial series where hopefully by the end we'll have a fully fledged game. This episode, titled UI Menus, Main Menu and Pause Menu, will be looking at setting up a working menu, along with a functional pause menu, being able to control the game state. So far, our UI has been focused mainly on gameplay, like objectives and text in the top left. But every game also needs different menus. Main menus at the start of the game, and a pause menu for during the game when you want to pause. Today we're going to be creating both of these. But before we head into today's episode, we'll be looking at the task that was set last episode. When we load up the game, you can see that we have the objective in the top left. We can interact with the keypad and get the completed objective. But if we carry on walking, our objective changes to break into the vault. This was simply duplicating the door, turning off the mesh renderer, and editing the interactable script. So the script is simply on trigger enter. If the other thing is tagged with player, we can just set the objective through the Objective UI instance to break into the vault. So with that said and done, we can get on to creating our menus. And so to begin with, I'll create a folder called Menus. This will house our different menu scripts. And then heading into that, I'll create our MainMenuUI script. So opening the script, get rid of all of the default. I'll begin by creating a public void start game. Get rid of the game manager stuff because we don't have a game manager at the moment. And we'll create a public game object reference for our main menu panel. We'll basically just hide the main menu panel once the game has started. We'll then add a new function for public void quit game, which is rather easy as it is a built-in function called Application.Quit. And just so that we're able to see it while we're testing, or do a debug.log quit game. Doing this because in the editor it is different to, I guess, the application. So when the application is built, Application.Quit will just close the program, but currently as we're only in the editor, nothing happens visually for us. So debug.log to make sure we're aware that it's working correctly. Heading back over to Unity, I'm going to create an empty game object, calling this managers. This will be basically a folder for our objective manager and our menu managers. And speaking of our menu managers, we'll create our first one, calling it MainMenuManager, and apply our MainMenuUI to it as a component. So heading over to our game tab now, I'm going to go into the hierarchy, go to our canvas, and we'll be creating a new panel. This will be our current main menu, just to go over the actual basics of it. Calling it main menu panel, and I'll increase the alpha and bring it down to a kind of darker grey, and put in our main menu panel as the game object reference. We'll head into our 2D viewer and focus mainly on the panel, and we'll be creating two buttons from Text Mesh Pro. We'll be creating a play button, and we'll be creating a quit button. So now that we have these buttons in our game, we're able to hook them up to our main menu manager. We can do that by heading into the on-click section, dragging in our main menu manager, and where it says no function, we'll be able to select what function we want to assign to the button. So in this case, it's start game, and for our quit button, it will be our quit game function. So running our game, if I press quit, you'll see that we get quit game. If I press play, it loads us into the game as it just disappears. For the moment, I'm going to turn off the main menu panel so we can start working on our pause menu panel. So creating a new panel, renaming it to pause menu panel, and for this one I'm just going to keep the alpha or opacity and just make it a bit darker so it is kind of like a tinted overlay on our game. And then we'll start by creating our PauseMenuUI script. So getting rid of all of the default stuff, we're going to start by creating a public game object for our actual panel within the game. We'll also create a private bool called isPaused, which will keep track of whether the game is actually paused or not. We'll create a private void update, which we'll need in a moment, but we'll now create a public void toggle pause. In this script, we're just going to grab isPaused equals to not isPaused, like a toggle we've done many times in the past at this point. We'll get the pause menu panel and set it active based upon isPaused. So if isPaused is false, it will set it to be false. If it is true, it will then be true, meaning that the pause menu will be shown and the game is paused. So now we can mess around with time. We can do time.timescale, and we'll use a ternary operator based on isPaused. So imagine this as 1 is normal speed, 0 is frozen. Based upon isPaused, we'll set the time scale to 1 or 0. We'll also make a public void resume game, which will just run toggle pause again. We'll create another public void restart. This one will actually be using Unity engine.SceneManager as for us to essentially restart. We'll set the time scale back to 1, grab the SceneManager and load scene, and with that we can load the active scene and essentially just reload our current level. To be quit to menu, as that's essentially what it's doing, as when this function is run, the main menu will basically be active again. But with update, I think I will remove this, as we'll be able to use the action input reference in the player controller. So rather than having update, we'll be able to keep all of the input actions all in one script. But so we can still reference this, I'll create a singleton by doing the standard public static PauseMenuUI instance and creating the awake. But I don't think we need the don't destroy on load. So heading back over to Unity, going into our system actions, got here by double clicking on this icon, we'll be adding a pause button ourselves. So we can add one by pressing the plus symbol, and then going within the pause and adding a binding. So I will be adding escape for keyboard and mouse, and I think we'll be adding start for gamepads. I can't remember if it's start or select, to be honest, but we'll be going with start for hours. So making sure we actually save the asset. We can now actually grab the reference for our player controller. I'll start by creating a new region. We'll call this UI variables. And we'll create a public input action reference, as we've done before for our movement and interactions. I'll call this PauseMenu. And within our update, we'll copy our, interaction and crouch kind of setup. If PauseMenu.action.was pressed this frame, I'll then search for our PauseMenuUI, grab the instance, and then just run toggle pause. So now that we have our script updated, I can go to our actual player. You can see that we now have the new field for the pause menu. And searching for pause under player, we can assign our pause button. So for now, we'll be creating a pause menu manager. We'll be able to put our PauseMenuUI script onto it and drag in the reference for the pause menu panel. We'll also create a start function within here to make sure that the pause panel is always hidden when we begin our game. So in theory, if we press play, our pause menu should disappear, which it has. If I press escape key, you can see I'm toggling between the pause menu being there and not being there. Now, similarly to our main menu panel, we can grab two buttons. I'm just going to do this by copying and pasting them over. And renaming our buttons to resume button. And we'll be dragging in the pause menu UI and changing it to resume game. And with our quit, similarly, just quit to menu. Just as a quick thing, we'll be having a start within our main menu UI, which will set the main menu panel to true. Just quickly changing the text on our pause menu buttons to resume and back to menu. So with that all done, if I press play, you can see that we begin with our main menu. I can press quit and we'll get the debug.log. I can press play, we load it into our game. I can press escape to have resume, and back to menu, which reloads the level, bringing us back to the main menu. So yeah, this is our very basic main menu and pause menu. We will continue to work on this as we develop our game, but for now, I'm happy with how it is. Okay, I'm going to leave this episode here, as I think it's quite a bit of info, but this is your task for this week. You can see that we now have a new button within our menu. We have quit, which still works, options, which toggles into an options panel. Not really with anything, because that's something we'll be looking into next episode, but if I press back, you can see that we return to the main menu. Your challenge for this week is to create this options panel, whether that's in scripting or any other way that you can think of. Apologies for this episode, as I've had to re-record the audio because my mic bugged out again. So it's a bit higgledy-piggledy with how it's been edited. As you can also see the date and time in the bottom right, so I'm in a bit of a rush. But with that said and done, thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to like and subscribe. Check out the links in the description below. And we'll see you next week by looking at our options and settings. Bye.